I just clicked the button. And it's in Studio Live.
All right. And if you're out there somehow listening to this, bear with me as I put up an AJ Green update. He's back on the practice field. The news is good. Well, at least for him, not for everybody. Better for some than for others, as always. The news is funny like that. And we should be going live here momentarily, so we'll let you know. In the meantime, hang tight. We'll have you. We are live now.
Looks like it.
Get the sound set, get everything going. Hope everyone's doing well. We'll give it a few minutes here to let some people show up. I'm Bob Harris. He's Emil Kadlec. I'm going to say that again when more people are here, but I said it now just to kill a little time while I'm putting a note in the chat. Talking about this. All right. Get us a little verbiage in the chat area. Nothing is simple, people. Trust me, I make it as difficult as I can. Hi, Peter. Thank you for the kind words. We'll be better as soon as I figure out how to do this. How to be ready when it's time to be ready. First of all, I should know that there are only a certain number of characters allowed when you put a comment in the chat. And in the future, I should probably have that number dialed in so I don't have to do it while you're sitting here waiting for me to talk. Hello, I am Bob Harris, Senior Editor of Football Diehards. He is Emil Kadlec, publisher and head honcho at the same establishment. Lots going on today. We've got a lot of news and information just put up on the site just moments ago. AJ Green back on the practice field, which is pretty much great news. Kind of expected it. Has been out since August 17th with a hamstring issue. It seems minor. Glowing reviews about Joe Burrow from people on the ground that I've talked to. Jay Morrison from The Athletic has been, in particular, glowing in his discussion of all things Bengals offense, but mostly Joe Burrow. If you read an update yesterday saying Auden Tate has been looked like the training camp MVP, Morrison attributes much of that to Joe Burrow, and he calls his accuracy stunning. And when you have these big-bodied receivers and you get them in the back corner of the end zone or wherever, Burrow has a really good understanding of where to throw the football, so only his receiver can get it. And guys like AJ Green and Auden Tate, T. Higgins fits that bill as well. Another big-body guy. Those are expected to be the top three, but Auden Tate's going to be in the mix too. But Joe Mixon was another guy that Jay really was high on. So we're going to talk about running backs today a little bit, and we'll answer all your questions. So please chime in. Hit the subscribe button underneath the notification bell if it works for you. If not, we're working on the notification bell so you know when things happen. David Montgomery news we will talk about today and get into. He strained a groin. They're optimistic, but I think as one of my loyal followers on Twitter said, optimism is code for we'll buy some time until we can sign Devonta Freeman or someone. There are other guys. Values, Bradley. It was Brad Cruz on the Pro Forecast. It is you do need the magazine or you need to be on the site. The auction values are in the Pro Forecast magazine. So if you're on the site and you have premium subscription, you can get into the digital version of the magazine and look at those auctions. And they are dead on, man. I've done a number of auctions, 3 or 4, and they've been fantastic. So get your subscription if you don't have one. And if you don't have one, go to footballdiehards.com/free trial and take a look. You can see him there. It's that easy. Then buy it. Use the promo code Diehards to get a 15% discount as well. All right, so we'll get into some of these questions here. Emil, how are you today?
Doing well, a little under the weather, but I'll survive, hopefully.
Nothing coffee won't fix. So a few questions. Your thoughts on Josh Jacobs versus Clyde Edwards-Helaire? If you want Clyde Edwards-Helaire, the first thought is you're going to have to pay for him. His ADP is significantly higher, noticeably higher. I don't want to say significantly. He's going at about 106. Josh Jacobs is up to 109. There's been a lot of positive talk about Jacobs, playing a greater role in the passing attack. I don't know that he really needs to, but if he doubled his catches from last year and got 40, they're talking about 60. Does doubling to 40 seem realistic? Maybe. They added a lot of bodies in the receiving core as well. Henry Ruggs, Brian Edwards, Lynn Bowden. Tyrell Williams has a shoulder issue, so maybe he doesn't get the targets he got last year, but he didn't get a ton either. So there we have that. I think you're going to have to, if you want Edwards-Helaire, you're going to have a top 6, top 7 pick, based on recent drafts I've been in. Jacobs is a fine consolation prize. Nothing we've seen would have you reverse that, Emil. I mean, there is no argument for Jacobs over Edwards-Helaire at this point.
No, not at this point. And like you said, it's going to be controlled by where you are in your draft. Obviously, if you have the 6th pick and you have both, they're both there. At this point, I just go with Helaire.
Unless you're in an auction, then you get whoever the hell you want. As long as
that's right. You can negotiate the situation.
Eric Holmes loves the magazine. Thank you, Eric. Have won 3 titles with your info. Have a keeper question, if I may. 10-team, standard PPR. Devontae Parker in the 10th or Hunter Henry in the 6th. Kittle, Waller, and Ingram have been kept by other teams. I'm still keeping Devontae Parker in the 10th. Hunter Henry, a little too rich for my blood, in the 6th for starters. But Devontae Parker in the 10th is something I can't pass up on. I think you have a potential wide receiver 1 at 10th round prices. Emil, your thoughts on Hunter Henry?
Yeah, I agree with you there. I would the 6th. Yeah, I'd take Parker there. And if you wanted to later in the draft, you could get Preston Williams kind of as a backup, depending on how deep your rosters go. But it's hard to take Henry as a 6th to me. It's a
6th round pick. I mean, I'm getting him a little later in drafts, and I think the thing about tight end this year, and we've talked about it a lot. I'm not really that keen on that middle range of tight ends. I'm preferring to go a little later if I don't get one of the early guys. So. And Henry falls into that middle range. He's kind of the tail end of it. I'm ranking him as my tight end 10. So I'd probably rather wait later and get maybe more of an upside guy anyway. So your mileage may vary. So take that into account. With a 12, Rotan Hiking Hammock Club Rotan. That's an interesting name. It's long. If by interesting, I mean long. I need help with my 12-team 3-keeper league, guys. Top 4 in no particular order: DeAndre Hopkins, Patrick Mahomes, George Kittle, and Austin Eckler. Standard league. So who are we throwing overboard, Emil?
10-team league, and those are the first. I'd hate to have to take quarterback that early. Wow, I'm not sure who to throw away there. It's because Eckler's usually a late first round, top of second round. You're taking him with the first 4 picks. I don't know who to throw away there. What do you think?
Not because I don't like Hopkins, not because I don't think he'll have a great season. I have him ranked as wide receiver 5. All those other guys are, much higher up in my rankings at their position. Eckler is not, but it's such a position of scarcity that he's in my top 12. Kind of makes it hard for me to let go of him. I wouldn't talk you out. If you don't trust Eckler's role last year to carry over this year with the change of quarterback with Phillip Rivers gone, that's understandable as well. But I'm probably going to trust it, take a chance. PPR, he said, did he not say? He did not say. So
didn't say, yeah. Well, he said standard league.
There's a lot, standard league. So there's a lot of value at wide receiver. I'm probably gonna take those other guys. It's a tough call. I get why you're dealing with it. Why you're struggling with it. All right, 12-team league. So there we go. Ted Cox got the first of 2 offline drafts this weekend. He wants to use a configurable cheat sheet, which he loves. Any advice on his site about how to going back using the tools? Emil, help the man out.
Yeah, well, he's having trouble finding it, or
just wants to know about how going about using the other tools.
Oh, okay. Well,
Anything
if you go to the
else?
tools tab, there's second half factors. There's a lot of tools there where you can just, figure out what you want to do. You can go to the university and look at some strategies. You and I had a strategy video a few weeks ago, and you have the stomp theory, which is a great one that integrates into the configurable cheat sheet. It's about a 25-minute video. It really talks about how to manage your draft and using the stomp tool, which includes the configurable, among many other things, including look at the camp news and just refreshing yourself on things that have happened over the last few days or weeks. Tons of stuff.
Yeah, the stop tool in particular, I think is pretty good to help you understand where to target guys you're really interested in versus ADP. Very useful. The configurable cheat sheet, though, is a good starting point, and it works hand in glove with the configurable cheat sheet.
Yeah, I think the stomp tool and the strategy in the university really talk about looking at all your rounds and understand how to manage what you're going to do throughout the draft, which is very important to kind of get a handle on.
And just to be clear, Rotan wants to know, so dump Hopkins. Not dump Hopkins. You have to leave one guy off. I'm not dumping anybody. I want to keep them all, but I can't. You said I could only keep 3. So I'm keeping the number 1 quarterback, the number 2 tight end, the number 12 or the top 12 running back, and I'm going to take my chances at wide receiver.
I think that's a pretty good strategy. I don't think you can dump some of those other guys. Standard League kind of helps Kittle a little bit too because of, he has a lot of targets, but got to dump 1 out of 4.
Yeah, I don't know if I think any of those guys are like super high-end scorers except Mahomes. But man, you have 4 guys that are, in the top 5 to 12 at their position. So I'm just throwing out the guy at the position with the least scarcity that I see. So
that's
don't mean to sound like I'm dumping anybody. I'm just making a hard decision. Let's see. 3 years from now, who are the top 5 rookies from this year? I think if you include this year, which I'm going to, you're going to say a couple of the running backs and maybe even 3 running backs. But I think Edwards-Helaire this year is a fair bet to have a really good role. I think Jonathan Taylor is too. I think you probably, I've talked to a lot of people who, think that J.K. Dobbins is going to be a top 5 pick next year, right? Maybe all 3 of these running backs are going to be top 5 picks next year. So, I mean, the wide receivers, if you're talking about the shorter term, the 3-year window, if you're talking about the longer term window, I would probably include some of those wide receivers who were drafted. I think some of those receivers are super good. Jerry Jeudy, CeeDee Lamb, just Justin Jefferson comes immediately to mind, Jalen Reagor. I think there's a lot of guys who have a chance to establish, and I don't mean to leave out Henry Ruggs because I think he's good at just the Raiders' history with that first pick. But more of a jinx than anything. But I think all those guys in 3 years are going to be really good players. But if you're asking me, who's going to be top 5, I think it'll be those 3 running backs. Emil?
Yeah, I think those are great ones. We got some really nice running backs this year that are good dynasty-type players. There's a lot of receivers. I mean, even Claypool we were talking about the other day, who was, I forget where he was drafted at. He was being a very good player.
The 2nd round, and really a lot of positive buzz about him in training camp, not just from the guys who cover the team who are talking about him in very glowing ways. I think Mark Caboli from The Athletic, who's been covering that team for a long time, said he's making non-rookie catches while running non-rookie routes and making non-rookie moves. And at least 2 teammates, including Joe Hayden, has said he's going to be a huge problem for defenders. So you look at the Steelers' history of finding these wide receivers. I think Pro Football Talk kind of compared it to think about Michael Thomas coming out in the 2nd round, maybe with more talent, and he used that as a bit of a chip on his shoulder that still fuels his fire, and maybe suggesting Claypool is that. The thing I like about Claypool is he's a 6'4" guy. He's the kind of the different piece that'll fit in that offense. But there are a lot of some of the wide receivers and even the tight ends. I mean, there's guys at tight end that might be reasonably good down the stretch that maybe won't be for a year or two. So, that makes it a little tricky. It's easy to go with running backs. Let's see. Joe Mixon versus Miles Sanders, who is mildly injured. It doesn't sound like it's going to keep him out week 1. So I'm going to just go ahead and stipulate right here. I am all about the Joe Mixon. I have been all along. I rank him probably higher than anybody that I've seen recently. I have him at 6 overall. I look at the usage down the stretch last year after the bye week. They really figured out how to adjust their play calling to maximize. Look, they were getting whooped every week. He was getting tons of carries. He was the most productive back, not named. Derrick Henry and Miles Sanders over the final 8 weeks of the season, even on a team that had no defense and was playing from behind every week. So think about they get a few positive game scripts. They get a good quarterback. Maybe they use them a little more in the passing attack. I like Mixon an awful lot. I'm not talking anyone out of Sanders because, did I mention there were only like two running backs as productive or more productive down the stretch, and one of them was Sanders. So, still somewhere in the back of my mind, I feel like, Doug Peters is going to pull the okey doke. He's probably not, and they haven't brought anyone in to compete. And I don't think Boston Scott is legitimate competition any more than Giovanni Bernard is for Joe Mixon. So this is maybe a little personal preference, and maybe the fact that Sanders is not fully healthy is a bit of a difference maker. Emil, how do you see that?
I think you put it brilliantly. With the new quarterback, maybe this even helps Mixon.
Yeah, get a positive.
He's got us in the past a little bit where we got excited about him, and sometimes you have to clear the past and look into the future. And there's a lot of good signals from the late last year that means Mixon is a guy that you're probably ahead of Sanders.
Yeah, if we were, so they were both. I want to just say, how good they were. The first half of the season, Sanders really struggled. But he was sharing as well with Jordan Howard. But once he got down the stretch, I think his carries went from 3.5 yards per carry in the first 7 games. The final 9, he averaged 5.2 yards per carry. His receiving, he caught 50 passes, averaged 10 yards a catch. So, clearly he made the most of his opportunities once he got them. But I would say the same with Mixon. And let me just bring up the numbers down the stretch. They were amazing. And also remember, Jonah Williams is coming back. And they were without him, the offensive tackle they drafted, and a guy they were counting on to upgrade the offensive line. Over the final 8 weeks, Mixon had 177 carries, 817 yards, and 5 TDs. He had 4 games of 110-plus yards rushing down that stretch, including 163 yards against the Browns in the finale. So, and he has some room for upside in his receiving. But I could beat that dog to death all day because I love Mixon. I love Sanders too, but we're splitting hairs here. Where's a great place to find defensive player rankings? We have those in the magazines. And Gary Davenport, or do we have an update on that from Gary?
Here's a link for the strength of schedule that has defensive rankings for people who have premium content.
Okay, did you want individual? Let me know. The defensive player rankings were what he was after. So
I thought he said defensive rankings. Yeah.
Yeah, just defensive player rankings. So, do we have Gary's up on the site, or are they just in the magazine?
No, they're just in the magazine. But I'll talk to Gary. Let me write that down as a note.
We'll get some up. Gary Davenport is one of the best IDP guys in the business, and he does do them for our magazine, and we'll get an updated version up on the site. So watch out for that. And Brian Larkin says in most mocks he's taken Derrick Henry in the 1st and A.J. Brown in the 5th. My league is non-PPR. Would you avoid a wide receiver running back combo? I have a kind of a thing I do with this. If you're going to put all your eggs in one basket, make sure it's a really good basket. I think, the Titans offense last year was a super good basket. The thing about Brown was he had to be super efficient. And every week when I watched him, I was thinking, how is he making all these points without that many catches? He only had 59 catches all season. And maybe that number goes up. They're a run-first team. But, man, he just kept making big plays. And every week I'd watch, I go, well, he can't make big plays like that every week. And then he would just come out and make big plays like that every week. So it's possible he is that good. And I've heard, from recent practices, Ryan Tannehill says he's going to make a huge jump this year. So some of this is, I'm a little concerned about the offense because they are so reliant on the rushing attack. And even as I say that realizing that Ryan Tannehill was a top 10 quarterback down the stretch and that A.J. Brown was a phenomenal fantasy wide receiver. So
I think that fits well into the non-PPR. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I would say to the standard scoring, that kind of makes that a little easier.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, well, we're going to take are we sleeping on Keenan Allen? I think we are. I've been saying it all along. I'm going to write an update on this tonight. And, I think one of the concerns has been Tyrod Taylor at quarterback. We just see a change of quarterbacks and we get a little worried. There's a piece out today. I'll do an update on it tonight on the website, but just talking about how good his deep ball looks. Keenan Allen was talking about it today. But in general, I mean, Keenan Allen is 130 targets, 1,100 yards, 6 TDs each of the last 3 seasons. He's kind of past the injury issues. I think he's a great high floor player and one that we're easily overlooking. And I haven't been overlooking. I've been drafting him a hell of a lot lately. And some of it depends on roster construction. If I get Michael Thomas early or, someone like Devontae Adams, I'm usually looking for riskier guys later. But if I maybe go 3 running backs and then a tight end and then a quarterback and all of a sudden it's the 5th round, I'm going, damn, I need a wide receiver 1 or 4th round. I think he's a good high floor guy that you could count on and then maybe add to that.
Well, by the way, going back to A.J. Brown for Tennessee, just to look at his numbers in week 14, 15, and 16 last year when they were running the ball heavy, 33 fantasy points at Oakland, 25 fantasy, these are PPR, against Houston. And then in week 16, he caught 1 ball and rushed the ball 1 time and scored 15 PPR fantasy points. So he did pretty good at the end of the season,
Yeah,
A.J.
he's
Brown.
pretty solid. And Mike Williams' injury sounds like he won't be ready for week 1. Jalen Guyton is looking like the number 2. So, yes, a lot of things pointing in. And the easy early schedule. I think they open with the Bengals, and it doesn't get really much harder until they hit, like, the Saints, like week 5 or something like that. So, yes. The answer to the question is yes. That was a very long answer for yes. Where can you find the results of the Double Player Dynasty League? I've mentioned a few times. I will put a link into it. It's not on the site because it's such a weird league. It's something we're doing for the radio show. It is a 32-team, basically a 2 leagues at a time. I'll put up a link to the draft. With 2 copies of each player, full IDP, 50-man rosters. It's a monster. We're almost done drafting.
Wow.
So you can take a look at that on the. That'll take you right to the draft page. And thanks for asking about that. It's been an experience. All right then. So I think we're caught up on the questions. So we were going to talk about running backs. We've talked about some of them, but we've talked a lot over the last few days about the top tier. And for me, just looking at ADP, there's an interesting thing that I see. We have Christian McCaffrey, Barkley, Alvin Kamara, Dalvin Cook, Ezekiel Elliott, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, Joe Mixon, Miles Sanders, Kenyon Drake, Austin Eckler. I think those 13 guys are basically a top tier. If you drafted any of those guys or thought any of those guys were first rounders or as they stand early second rounders, I would not argue with you. Then there's a 2-back tier that I think is a transition to the tier we're going to talk about. There's Aaron Jones and Nick Chubb, who are going off 13 and 14. I think both those guys could end up in that top tier easily. They'll have the workloads, and they're not without upside. And so then, though, you get into a tier of running backs that I think is the most interesting we're going to talk about today. And mostly they're the clear path to workload guys, just for starters. It starts with James Conner at 15, Le'Veon Bell, Chris Carson, David Johnson, Todd Gurley, Leonard Fournette, Melvin Gordon, Jonathan Taylor, and the just hurt David Montgomery, who kind of brought up the rear of that. And we'll see how bad Montgomery's hurt. I don't know that it's good. They're saying, it's a groin injury, and they're optimistic that he'll return from this, in a timely manner. I don't believe them. I'll believe them when I see that. If you watch the video of it on Twitter, it was not a pretty sight. I mean, it looked like he went down. It looked like he was in a hell of a lot of pain. I don't know if I can put a tweet in the chat. Let me try this. But anyhow, so Emil, as we look at those running backs, I like Chris Carson kind of at the top of that group at number 15. Tell me why I'm wrong.
Yeah. Well, he's that non-sexy player people kind of forget about. Petty's out for a while. They got Hyde, who's, manageable. And he fumbled the ball a little last year, Carson did, but they still kept playing him. He's going to get the touches. He's going to get the touches. He may not be pretty. Pardon?
Where did he finish last year? Running back 12? Yeah.
Now let's go take a look while we chat.
I think he finished as running back 12. So Emil's points, I think, are the points I'd want to make. I think maybe you click on that. You can see the film there of David Montgomery going down. But if you look at the history with Seattle, I mean, these other guys, I trust the workload for James Conner as long as he's healthy. I trust the workload for Le'Veon Bell, and I trust him to do nothing with it, or very little with it. I mean, that offense needs to get better, I think. They've upgraded the offensive line, so I'm kind of thinking that's okay. I think Todd Gurley, I think clear path to workload. Leonard Fournette, huge path to workload. I think that's a guy that we're all worried about the passes he's not going to catch. We should be thinking more about the carries he's going to get because they're going to be copious, just like last year. He was near the top of the league in rushing attempts. I would expect more of that. Melvin Gordon, I'm a little dicey on. Jonathan Taylor, I feel pretty good about, but, the workload is to be determined a little bit. So I think for me, Carson is the top of that list. And other than that, David Johnson, I think, is a reasonably good play. But let's just talk about James Conner. The expectation is with Ben Roethlisberger back that, they'll go right back to passing. And let's make no mistake, they're going to pass more because they passed for almost 2,000 fewer yards last season with Duck Hodges and Mason Rudolph at quarterback than they did the year before with Roethlisberger. But they want to be a run-first team. And Conner was super good in the games he was up, right? He wasn't as healthy as we wanted to be. What, he missed 6 games, I think?
I'll have to go look that up. That's a lot.
I have it right in front of me. He did. He missed it was limited to 10 games, 116 carries, shoulder and thigh injuries. But in the games he was healthy, and even with limited touches in some of those games, he ranked as a top 10 back 3 times, finished in the top 25 times of his 10 games. And he was playing some of those games hurt. So I think the missed time is probably the only thing between him and a higher ADP right now. So, and just given the Steelers' history, they have other guys there. They have Betty Snell behind them. They drafted Anthony McFarland. But Mike Tomlin's quote, "I'm a feature runner type guy by mentality." He is. He always has been.
So do you think he's going to be healthy this year? Because that's pretty much it right now.
That's the question, right? What's your level of confidence that James Conner can stay healthy? I think putting him at the top of that list, I'm not as okay with. And by the way, I'll just stipulate, Carson is coming off a fractured hip. He didn't need surgery. He's been practicing. He's missed some time with a personal issue, but it's not bad. So I like that. I think, James Conner's a fine pick, and I would pick him there. Le'Veon Bell, it was a tough slog for him last year. And I wonder, I know they've done some upgrades on the offensive line. They've tried to upgrade some of the talent around him. I just don't have a lot of confidence in the offense itself. He finished with 255 carries, which was 11th in the NFL. Despite that, he had just 2 runs of longer than 15 yards. He finished as the running back 6 through 10 in 6 of 15 games, ranked outside the top 26 times as well. I don't think it's really on Bell. I think it's just a lousy offense. Do you expect it to get better, Emil?
I have my doubts. I start to wonder also, is he getting a little too old? How's the offensive line? It's a tough one. When can you get him? You have to take him in the 4th round. He's the 19th going running back. Carson's the 21st going running back ADP-wise. I'd be more angling to situate myself to take Carson over Bell, even though Bell's ADP is a little higher.
We have a question here before we get into the next guys. 12-team full PPR points per completion. He keeps 2, cost him a pick in the round stipulated. So DJ Moore in the 4th round, Christian Kirk in the 5th round, Russell Wilson in the 7th round, Michael Gallup in the 11th, Ronald Jones in the 17th, Slayton in the 17th, Harris in the 17th, N'Keal Harry in the 17th, Deontay Johnson in the 17th.
Slayton looks pretty attractive in the 17th, and Gallup looks pretty attractive in the 11th. And Ron Jones.
I mean, points per completion, I might go with Russell Wilson in the 7th. I think that's a fair price, and he is going to be a top quarterback, and maybe they will let Russ cook this year, as we keep hearing on the Twitter box. Beyond that, I mean, I think Gallup in the 11th is, for a guy that last year, where did he finish, Emil?
Let's go take a quick look here.
I mean, I think he's, for some reason, I think more in the 4th round is about the price you're going to pay right now. I think Kirk in the 5th round is way more than you're going to pay right now. The rest of those guys, all those 17th round guys, I wouldn't talk you out of Slayton or Deontay Johnson. I think Slayton is the guy it would be for me of those guys. And Ronald Jones is going to be the lead guy to start the season. I don't know if he's going to stick there.
Gallup was the 23rd wide receiver last year.
And he missed 3 games.
Whoa.
So I'm probably going Russell Wilson and Gallup here, just given the prices. And, Wilson is maybe a little bit of a push. I don't know. He's been very efficient as a passer. I don't think he's, doesn't throw as much as other guys, but it's not like he doesn't throw at all. So I'm probably going that direction.
Well, if you got other quarterbacks you can take in the draft, then you can go one of the other ways. Like I like Slayton at 17. That's a heck of a one. And even Deontay Johnson's at 17. So you've got some options there.
I want to look at the number of completions. Stats leader completions, number of last year. Breeze was his percentage. I want numbers, damn it. Here we go. So Russell Wilson was 10th, 380 completions. Is that right? That's pretty good. Matt Ryan, 408. So that's a lot of completions. I would take a top 10 quarterback in completions probably in the 7th round in this one and hope he throws more. But again, those other receivers down there, if that's the direction you want to go, I would not talk you out of any of them. And it would be Slayton for me, and it would go with Gallup. But I'm going Gallup and Russell Wilson.
Yeah, I wish I knew what else was available at quarterback or what would be available. That would help me make that decision because typically there's you're deep at quarterback, although the points per completion does throw a little wrench into the calculation.
Trying to double check.
A lot of possibilities you got there. That's at least you got choices.
Pro Football Reference has him with 341 completions last year on 341 attempts. So his high for attempts has been 541, and his high on completions has been 353. So. Yeah,
and the question also next year, is this a sliding scale? In other words, if you give up a 17th pick for Slayton, is it 16 the next year, or does it get all washed and start over? Because if you know whether you can keep a guy for several years, starting at 17 and maybe moving slightly down, that may help in your decision point.
Yeah, it's a little closer. I mean, look, 17th round is basically freebies. You'll have all those other picks to make up ground. So there's a good point to be had there. That's for sure. Those are great prices on all those guys.
Yes.
All right. So getting back to those running backs we were discussing, one of the interesting guys in that range was David Johnson. I want to get this back up. And so what's interesting is, Carlos Hyde basically stumbled his way to a pretty solid season last year. And so I guess the question becomes, do you think David Johnson is just washed up? And if so, is he more washed up than Carlos Hyde? And I guess, it's a fair debate. Since he entered the league in 2015, only David Johnson and Christian McCaffrey have seasons of 800-plus rushing yards and receiving yards. So I just think with DeAndre Hopkins gone, he's a good weapon for Deshaun Watson. Let's see. I wanted to look at the numbers the first 6 games last year because I think, we all thought he was horrible last year. First 6 games before he was beat up, he was pretty damn good.
25, 8, 18, 21, 18, and 28 fantasy PPR points through the first 6 weeks.
Right. So I feel like for the price, he's pretty good value here, just in terms of the opportunities. Look, you never know what these guys are going to end up doing once they get on the field, and I know he's been a disappointment the last couple years. So, I'll factor all that in. I think that's why we're getting him so cheap. That's probably, also, and I don't like to get too much into narratives because it's easy to get caught up in them, but the Texans want him to do good because they don't want to look as stupid as everyone thinks they are right now for trading DeAndre Hopkins for David Johnson. So I kind of get that. I think the value there is the 18th back off the board. Between him and Gurley, Emil, I would rather have both of them over Le'Veon Bell. I would rather have Leonard Fournette over Le'Veon Bell as well. But Todd Gurley, we just got news yesterday. You can go to the website. It's footballdiehards.com if you're just tuning in here. And I have news. ESPN's Vaughn McClure reported Dirk Cutter, the offensive coordinator, did a lengthy interview where he talked about Todd Gurley getting 15 to 25 touches a week. And that seems pretty reasonable. The report, last year I think he ended up averaging, his career average is about 20 per game. Last year he was down about 16. He ended up still a pretty good running back, right? I think where did he end up in the rankings, Emil?
Yeah, let's go take a look. And by the way, what does it mean by 15 touches?
I think rushes and catches.
Well, what I meant was, how does that project into fantasy points? And I just did some quick math when I was drinking coffee earlier today, and it kind of got around, I kind of figured that to be around 11 points PPR, which is, and then the 25 is a lot higher, so about 19 or 20. So he could be more like an RB2. Of course, we're ranking him as the 16th or so running back, so that's kind of about where he's at. So on the low end, maybe, if he gets a little more than the 15, then maybe his value is undervalued. Who was I looking for last year? Gurley. Gurley ended up 14th in PPR and 12th in non-PPR.
Yeah, so I look down the stretch. He was really good. A lot of touchdown equity to be had there. I think it's a good offense, right? And I mean, they score a lot of points, most of them through the air, granted. But Gurley can catch the football. But he's always had a really good nose for the end zone, and I just think he's going to get a lot of red zone opportunities. So that pushes him up ahead for me of those guys. Then we get into we can talk about Fournette a little bit because I think it's funny. Everyone's he is not going to catch those 70 what was it, 76, I think, passes last year. Yeah, 76 catches. He had like 100 targets. He catches the ball well, though, so don't be surprised if he still catches some, people. But basically, 265 carries, I would expect him to get somewhere close to that range again. And the big issue last year was the touchdown numbers and that he only scored 3, so our buddies over at Fantasy Pros, Mike Tagliere, noted there have been 372 running backs who've totaled at least 150 touches over the last 10 years. 14 of those had fewer touchdowns than Leonard Fournette did. So it would be a surprise if he got in that range again. I mean, it's almost like a bizarre quirk of fate that he didn't score more. He should have scored more by accident, just based on the numbers, right? Yep. He scored 3 touchdowns on 341 total touches, or once every 113 touches. Doubling that touchdown total seems really reasonable. 6,
Definitely.
And if he got to double digits, it wouldn't be a surprise. And if he did, we'd be having a different conversation about him next year when he's on a new team.
And these are the kinds of things you're looking at. There's a little negativity because they wanted to trade him, or they were talking about trading him, and that just kind of gives you that negative attitude. He didn't score at the goal line, but like you said, the chance of these things changing and going up, not much. 6 would make it work. If he falls in your draft, he's a guy you may seriously consider because he could really help your team.
Drum Dog 100 kept Adams, Rodgers, and Jones in a 3-person keeper league, 18-team league. Are there any other Packers worth taking? I think at some point in an 18-team league, Jay Sternberger's going to go, even though we don't know for sure he's going to be the starter, according to the coach. We'll talk about Robert Tonyan. I think Alan Lazard will be taken in that league and probably worth taking. There's been a little back and forth, varying opinions on who they want to be, the wide receiver 2. At least one of the local beat writers noted on a Reddit, Ask Me Anything, that he thought they wanted Marquez Valdez-Scantling to come on, and he went through an injury last year. The Athletic reported today that they still think that Lazard has established himself as that second option. So for me, it'd be Lazard, then Valdez-Scantling, and if you're in this 18-team league, which seems really deep, I mean, you could say Equinemius St. Brown, if you're getting him cheap enough. And Sternberger and Tonyan and A.J. Dillon and maybe even Jamal Williams in an 18-team league. I mean, I think you have the right three. I'll go there.
Yeah, I'd love to have Dylan in an 18 team. I'd love to have Dylan just to watch the guy walk around on the sidelines and occasionally run at the goal line. What a monster!
Yeah, he's a big man. And we've talked about this before, but I just think it's funny that Matt LaFleur, if you've seen the pictures of him floating around on Twitter, it's pretty amazing. He's very, very thick man. And Matt LaFleur, the head coach there, said he's never seen a player like him at running back. And that's interesting because Matt LaFleur was the offensive coordinator of the Tennessee Titans and coached Derrick Henry, who's a pretty big guy. So just interesting to give you an idea how unique a specimen A.J. Dillon is. The magazine has Chicago with both an easy pass and run schedule. Would you draft Allen Robinson in the second or David Montgomery in the sixth? The Montgomery injury today throws a little wrench in the works. If you scroll back up, I have a link to the film of that injury. And it turns out you have to probably copy and paste links because when I paste them in, they're either hard to see because they aren't clickable. So if you scroll back up, I have a link to that on Twitter. Anyways, so yes, Allen Robinson in the second is a little high for me. I think you can get him cheaper. Just checking the current ADP to make sure, but I've gotten him later. I love him though. I mean, I have him in my top 10. So yeah, I guess second round is where he's going, 206. Wow. So yeah, I mean, I think he's worth it. I think that if you look at his numbers last year in a horrible offense with lousy quarterback play, he was still super productive. So I think he is. David Montgomery's a little different story. I mean, I don't think I think sixth round is a fair price for him if he's healthy. And that's something you'll want to watch. And it's something you probably will not know today or maybe even tomorrow, and maybe not until they either sign or don't sign somebody around the end of this week. But Allen, if you look at the targets that they've just, he's a solid workload guy. I don't think you can go wrong, even in the second. I thought I was getting him in the third, but maybe he's gone up some since I last drafted him.
Did you look at that question a few times ago with McCaffrey and Lamar for dollar values? Robert Ferenc.
Did I miss one? Oh, okay, I see it. Can keep two players. McCaffrey would cost $100, Lamar $10. Other options: Adams for $22, Aaron Jones for $13. Won the league last year. We spent $110 on those top two players. I would not overpay for McCaffrey. That's a lot.
I'd take Lamar for 10, that's for sure. But
I'd take Lamar for 10 and celebrate greatly. I would take Aaron Jones probably for 13. Although Devontae Adams for 22 is a screaming deal as well. But
yeah, that's true. That's a very good deal.
McCaffrey is super good. I haven't seen him go higher than 70. I know. I think in the Pro Forecast, maybe you could look at how high he goes. I think 67 to like 74 or something is the range.
Yeah, that's about right.
And I haven't seen him go that high. I've seen him go a little bit lower. I think the highest I heard about him going for was 77. So, that's a lot of money for two players. But the Lamar is a screaming deal. I would keep that all day long.
Unless you got to do it as a tandem. But yeah, Lamar at 10. That's a quick decision right there.
Just going back to Allen Robinson real quick. He had 5 games with 20-plus fantasy points. He had 16-plus points in 5 of his last 6 games of the season. And that's despite playing with Mitchell Trubisky, who turns out isn't that great. And by the way, the competition, the current observer, at least one observer there, currently has Foles inching ahead. I think Trubisky wins the job because they've invested a hell of a lot in him. When you trade up to get a quarterback, you trade up to draft him over Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson. You have reason to let him make good on that investment, even if he hasn't. So I'm guessing he gets at least a few more chances as a starter. All right. So yeah, I'm all on board Allen Robinson no matter what, and I think second round is turns out is fair enough. I would rather have him in the third, but I guess we're not going to get him there.
I guess not.
So at the tail end of those running backs we were talking about, Emil, was David Montgomery. I think he's one of the last, and I kind of felt a little good about his upside. I don't feel good about him at all now. The uncertainty screws this whole thing up. But Jonathan Taylor. So we all know the story. It's a 1-1 punch, him and Marlon Mack, until it's not. And my feeling is it's not going to be pretty early on. I mean, Taylor is so well suited to this offense, running behind that road grading offensive line. He's a big play threat, 4.4 speed to his size, or actually sub 4.4 speed. Probably can catch the ball a little better. Not as experienced in the passing game. Look, they didn't throw him the ball a lot at Wisconsin. They didn't ask him to pass protect a lot. So, those are going to be issues that, are factors as well. But it was interesting. There was an interview with Marlon Mack on the team's website. He just looked like a guy who knows, that he's not going to have this job for long. Some of the reporting that's been, is just that Taylor's making big plays. And from the observers who are there, the thought is that it's only going to take a couple of those big plays, a couple big games for him to lock up this role. So, he's got to have those. He's got to deliver them. I like him as an upside play if you're drafting him at the tail end of this group, Emil. And maybe you've drafted you've probably drafted one, maybe even two running backs already in a draft as a second or third running back, ideally a third running back if you go three early.
I don't think you're going to get him as a third. I think you can get him as your second. But, realize the first few weeks, maybe things it's going to take a little while. So have something else there. Even if you want to take Mac, and maybe Mac's a little high, I forget, maybe 8th, 9th, 10th round to help you out, or you just go for it. And you pick that guy as your second running back, and maybe you got somebody late that you can perhaps start the first few weeks just to make sure he gets going. So you have a couple ways of going there in your draft that kind of give you some security, or you don't take the security and you go for it.
I almost don't want that weekly decision, right? I just want it to be made for me. So
I agree. Sometimes it's like, I don't want to be,
right.
And the other problem is, let's say you take Mac and him, and then you're starting Mac in week 1, and Taylor comes in the second half and scores 2 touchdowns, and you're saying, what am I doing? So, you make the commitment and play the commitment. I agree with that.
I agree with that. So, by the way, Taylor's going right at the start of the 4th round. So, depending on how you draft your team, possible to get him as a third running back. I only say this because I missed out on him by 1 pick in a draft last week from getting him as my running back 3. I ended up with David Johnson instead. And I would have taken him over David Johnson in that case because I already had 2 backs, right? So, again, always roster construction, right? You're building risk within your roster and building some risk within the position groups on your roster. So I think in that draft, I had Miles Sanders first. I had Chris Carson second. I'm thinking, boy, if I could get, it's a little risky. Maybe he doesn't start right out of the chute, but I have a little leeway there because I have those guys ahead of him. So that's one of the things. We have a question from Timothy Miller of his top 5 to 6 quarterbacks. Which if any, do you think can flirt with 35-plus TDs? Mahomes, yes. Jackson, yes. Prescott, yes. Look, I think all of them could. But I know Mahomes and Jackson did last year, 36. So, Prescott.
Well, Murray's gonna run the ball a little bit. He may get that total up by his runs. Same thing with Wilson and Watson.
Yeah, I think it's it's possible. And yeah, he's got DeAndre Hopkins there now. So I think, honestly, if I sat here and really wanted to be an optimist, I could make an argument for all these guys. I think. But that said, we know that, one of them did it last year. Jameis threw for 33. Wilson threw for 31 last year. Prescott for 30. I don't think it's out of the question for any of those guys to hit that number. But if I was betting on it, if you made me say which one, I think the first 3 are the most likely.
Yeah, were you factoring in rushing touchdowns also? I don't have that on this page.
No, I'm just factoring in passes. If we're going to factor in rushing touchdowns, then all of them easily.
Yeah. Well, he said touchdowns. I don't know if he meant passing touchdowns or not. Yeah. Anyway, yes, lots of potential in those players.
Brian Larkin would have Tom Brady that list. Well, he certainly has the firepower, doesn't he?
That would be really incredible if he could throw 35 touchdowns this year for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That would be fun to watch. That would be really fun to watch.
Yeah, it would be very interesting.
And you can get Tom Brady how late? Around the 9th, 10th, 11th quarterback right now.
Right. Yeah, Drum Dog agrees. The people have spoken. Tom Brady is still the GOAT. And Mayweather, look, he's got a ton of targets there, right? By the way, Chris Godwin a little beat up, and Bruce Arians is being kind of secretive about it, as Bruce Arians likes to be. Said that's for me to know and you to not to find out, I think was the quote. But man, you got 3 tight ends, all capable scorers. You got 2 great high-end wide receivers. You've got the under-the-radar Scotty Miller. You got Justin Watson there, who's making some waves. Scotty Miller, by the way, getting rave reviews. You've got, Ronald Jones. We'll see what he can do. He's had some drops yesterday, but he'll start catching those, or Brady will murder him in the locker room sometime.
Well, Jameis Winston threw 33 touchdowns last year, if that says anything.
Point taken. Yep. That is the point.
You just worry about Brady. I guess I worry, is he physically healthy enough? I don't know why I worry about that.
Yeah, he seems – I think physically and mentally he seems like the same guy, but you always just have questions about a guy going to a new team. Maybe even more so in this environment without the offseason. But who got more offseason work in than Brady? You got the helicopter pictures. The police are coming to chase them off that school grounds because they're working. Tom Brady, he's not having any of this quarantine stuff, baby.
Who's going to physically and mentally prepare himself the best? It's hard to beat Tom Brady.
Anyone who will eat. Yes, Father Time is undefeated. That is a fair point, though, by Mr. Timothy Miller. A couple other backs I wanted to get to, Emil, just that are right outside this range that we're talking about. And I would say, we have questions about their path to workload. And we'll start with Mark Ingram. That includes Devin Singletary, Raheem Mostert, and Kareem Hunt. Then Ronald Jones, who I think, at least to start the season, has a clearer path to workload than maybe any of those guys not named Mark Ingram, who seems – look, I know we're all excited about J.K. Dobbins, and the talk even this week is that he's earning an early down role, and to open the season, he's making great plays in camp. But man, it's Ingram for me until it's not. And so, could that only last a game, 2 games, 3 games, 4?
Wish I had that understood. I really do, because Ingram did have a fantastic 2019 season.
Right. I feel like we're kind of dialing back on him, and the ADP is reflective of that dialing back, just because we know how good Dobbins can be and everything they said about him. So It's a little worrisome there. And the Zach Moss factor is a thing for Devin Singletary. Also, Devin Singletary not being that productive last year with his touches. It wasn't horrible, but it wasn't high end, and I wonder if they just don't want more from the position.
Most they're sharing the ball there. McKinnon's looking better, and it's just hard to see, him be going to be getting, like 70% of the rushes there. It may dilute enough that it drops him below those guys.
A little interesting news here. Adam Gay says Frank Gore looks like he did 12 years ago. Frank Gore goes on running endlessly, as our friend Marcus Grant says. Couple of questions here. Anyhow, I think, of those guys, Mostert, I'm not really excited about. And the guy that's going right after them, Kareem Hunt, Emil will draft before you no matter what.
Well, I did in the last draft just because I had taken those receivers early, and you can find that live draft and analysis on our website that we did last night. And so I kind of took a chance on him. I took him a couple picks early because I know what he did last year with Cleveland when he came back, and I was kind of in a position where I wanted to get somebody because I really needed my second running back. So I reached up a little bit, but not a ton.
Yeah, I think the reason you reach up is because you don't think you're reaching up, because last year's numbers suggest you're not.
Well, he was running back number 2 last year, and it was my second running back. So that fits, and maybe he's got a little more potential. I realize they've got a ton of skill positions on that team, but if Mayfield can improve, they can start scoring a lot more points, getting more snaps, and that's going to help everybody, including Hunt.
Yeah, they got competent coaching and a number of things they didn't have last year. So a few more questions before we call it a day here. Both of Robert Farring's leagues start a 1 quarterback. Normally, he might take 2 during a draft with COVID. I heard someone on Sirius to draft 3 quarterbacks in case one goes down with COVID. Would you draft 3? I'm not drafting. I haven't gone that far yet. I'm drafting 2 in 1 quarterback leagues. I would say that, if you talk to your league mates and they're open to it, it wouldn't be horrible to draft a team quarterback so you don't have to deal with not having a quarterback on game day. You know, let's say you can say I draft Baltimore quarterback, so you get all three of them, or however many there are. So you have at least a guy on the field, even if it's not the high-end guy. So maybe that, you know, takes care of some competitive balance issues. But if your league adds a roster spot, I'm not against using one of them for quarterbacks, but it would need an additional spot for me to want to do that.
That's a lot. You're going to have to give up a lot to have 3 quarterbacks. You're going to have a pretty deep roster. You know, you got to worry about COVID for the other skill positions. So it's not just a quarterback situation. So I would go with 2 quarterbacks in a 16 to 18 depth rosters. He didn't say how deep his rosters were. If you got a 14 or 15 man roster, it's kind of hard.
Yeah, one of them would essentially have to be a handcuff anyway, right? Because, I mean, you know, going 36 deep, there's only 32 teams. So
somebody's going to be on the outs.
Yeah, someone's going to be on the outs. I would say, you know, I've strongly suggested using team quarterbacks. I know not everyone agrees. Mike Tagliere at Fantasy Pros totally disagrees with me on this, but I think it's like, I mean, this is a season like we've never had. Waller or Ertz? Ertz for me, Emil?
Yeah, I still think Ertz is very valid. I know Dallas Goddard did pretty well last year, but I still think Ertz is going to be significant enough to be the fourth or fifth tight end this year. We're all worried about Waller kind of coming down a little bit, but I'd go with Ertz, and he's fallen pretty good in drafts. Obviously, you can get Waller about a round later, though.
5th round right now. I've gotten him in the last few drafts. If he's at that price, I love him. Waller's going a little after that. We're kind of buying last year's targets, and even if he doesn't get them, there's a little room for some touchdown progression from him. You know, he just didn't score a lot of touchdowns last year. Maybe he can do better in that regard. I just worry about him getting the same number of targets with the additional weapons. Not so worried about that with Ertz. A lot of the offense goes through the tight ends. Can we tell Kobe White what order we would take as tier 1 wide receivers? Julio, Tyreek, and Hopkins. I have them in that order: 3, 4, and 5 on my list.
I have Hill above, but the same order of the other 2. Pretty close.
Sarthak, appreciate this. Well, thanks for coming, Sarthak. We appreciate you coming here. First year in draft, which he doesn't have full selection of picks. Traded away a 4th round draft last year. I hope you got something good for it. Thank you, Brian. So Sarthak says the roster setting is pretty standard, so does missing out on an early pick make QBs and tight ends even less valuable? So I'm guessing this is some form of keeper league. So maybe that depends on a little bit on who you've kept and who's being kept. And, if everyone's keeping quarterbacks or the high-end quarterbacks and tight ends are already gone, then yes, they are less valuable. Sophia Phillips wants to know, PPR keeper league and second pick. She kept Dalvin Cook in round 2. Great pick. McCaffrey, Barkley kept in the first pick, taking Elliott. Thinking Michael Thomas with the second pick or another running. Look, you've already got Dalvin Cook. I could go Michael Thomas there.
Yeah, it makes sense to me.
Look at some of the other running backs that you have not mentioned who would be available, including Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I mean, a Dalvin Cook, Clyde Edwards-Helaire start would be phenomenal as well. But I don't, in a PPR league, Michael Thomas last year scored, 100 points more than the next wide receiver?
Yeah,
something
insane.
Ridiculous, 99 points. I have to look. I'm saying something and it might be stupid. Which I do that a lot, as anyone who listens to me on the Sirius radio program will know. Yeah, it was like actually 100 points more than the next person. So I did say something stupid. I said 99. So yeah. And thank you all for the kind words. I'd like to remind you all that we'll be doing this 5 days a week, at least through the rest of summer. I'm guessing, Emil, we're going to do some of this into the season, certainly more of this than we have in the past, and we'll have some of the guys on the staff joining us as well. I think tomorrow night, Thursday, we have a 8 p.m. Eastern mock draft. You're going to have John Laub on board, right? The scholar?
Yes. It's going to be a fun
John
one.
Laub, the scholar, will be joining Emil mock draft. I'll be here commenting, and we'll send out an invite if any of you want to get in on the mock draft. We'd love to have you. That would be phenomenal. So watch your email for that if you're a subscriber. And if you're not a subscriber, go to footballdiehards.com/free trial. Look around, see what we have. And then after about 5 minutes of seeing how great it is, Go to the order page, use the promo code Diehards to get a 15% discount. All our preseason material is up and running, the August update draft guide. You'll find news. Our rankings are constantly updated. All the tools available as well, the configurable cheat sheet, the mock draft simulator, the Diehards draft tool. All these things are available to you. The Stomp tool, all the technology that Emil Kadlec has whipped up. Then once the regular season begins, you'll be able to use the My Fantasy GM tool, which is going to be a game changer. Trust me on this one. It's a way to put a lot less effort into getting a lot more out of your teams. We'll bring in all your lineups from across all the major platforms, help you assess free agent moves, waiver wire moves, possible trade targets, and includes lineup optimizers as well, as we have all that for our DFS content. So go to footballdiehards.com and check it out. 5 days a week here, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We're here at 3 p.m. Eastern. Tuesday and Thursday, we're here at 8 p.m. Eastern, mostly mock drafting. Hit the subscribe button right underneath Emil and the notification bell once we get that figured out better. And so you get notifications in your phone. We're working on that. The bell is unavailable right now, but we have an idea how to take care of that. So we want you to get the notifications in your phone. Otherwise, watch your emails. We'll keep you posted via email on all these, and we appreciate you coming. And listen to me on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio like 3,000 days a week. It's not that many. It's like 6 days a week. You can catch us on Football Diehards Friday through Monday. You can catch me on Fantasy Dirt on Tuesday and Thursday. You can catch Football Diehards on SiriusXM Fantasy NFL Radio Saturdays from 5 to 8. So, man, lots of time. Call us, talk to us, hit us up here. We'll answer your questions. We love you all. You're wonderful people. We'll see you tomorrow.